Well, I came to Fanshawe probably 28 years ago, and I was in the behavioral science program and the social service worker program. And that was probably the most brave thing that I ever did in my life. Did I learn something here? Yeah, I did, but I learned more about how the systems really didn't know who we were as a people, and they're sending out social workers and caregivers out there in the world, and I realized they know nothing about our people. But back then I was still learning about who I am and was a little bit shy, and I was the only Native person in that program. So it was a little bit scary, because I was measuring myself up to all the non-Native students that were there. One instructor, though, in that program seen something in me, and he really supported me all the way through that. Or I don't think I would have stayed. I think I would have quit, because there's lots of times I wanted to quit because it was too scary, and it was things I never heard of before, like psychology, sociology, all of those kinds of things, because I hadn't been in the education system for 15 years before that. And then I went to schools in our community, which didn't teach us very much either. It was just survival. And then high school, it was just survival too. It was not, the education system was not a nice place for me from grade 1 to grade 12. It was scary. It was, I felt like we always had to be on guard or measuring up, or we were never good enough, especially in high school. Native students were never good enough, and it was like, oh well, just never mind. We don't have to give them any attention or help them with reading and writing, because they're just going to end up being drunks and not have any jobs, and that's just the way that those Indian kids are on the res. And those are the messages that I got as a young person. So the other thing is, he never encouraged us to do a higher education. I didn't know there was such thing as college and university, because we were never told that. We were never encouraged to be good at anything. It was just, we were there just because we had to be there. And the teachers were there just because they had to be there. Probably had one teacher in high school that was a little bit, that I could say a little bit trusted, but I still didn't trust any of them, because I always felt that we were just made to feel that we were less than. And so that was my struggle all through the education system. So when I came to college, that too was scary. There was no services or supports. There was no one I could talk to. There was a handful of Native students here, but none of us really knew each other. Everybody just kind of, if you made it, you made it. If you didn't, that's just the way that it was. So, but I made it, and that was the highlight of my life, because nobody in my family, I was the first one to graduate from from college. And when I graduated, I wore my traditional outfit, because that was a moment for me. And I was tired of hearing that Native people don't graduate from college, and, all of those kinds of things. And I did it for me. I didn't do it for anybody else. And that was really powerful. And the dean at that time, I can't remember her name, but it was a female. When I wore my regalia, I put the gown that we're supposed to wear, I put it over my arm to respect the college for my diploma I was getting. And when I walked across the stage, she shook my hand and she said, "You look very beautiful." I said, "Thank you," And when I got introduced, they said my Anishinaabe name. So they said Sitdown. That too was an awesome moment. I think that was the first time in history in this college that somebody walked across that stage and they were acknowledged by their Anishinaabe name. So that was pretty nice. So my cultural knowledge came, oh my God, probably maybe when I was about 21 or 22, and my dad start learning about this way of life and start taking us to ceremonies, and we start going to powwows, and then my sister passed away, and then it was even more intense that we go find out about culture. So my mom and my dad, my stepdad, was the one that took us to all different places, different gatherings where our people gathered, and we would just sit and listen to the teachings. But back then I wouldn't have known it was teachings. All as I knew is it felt really good, and it felt like, oh, this really made me feel happy about who I am when I start learning the history and about ceremony and about our medicines. And then my dad and I would sit up for hours and hours and talk about those things. And one of the things I asked him is, "Dad, how come you're not teaching us the language?" And he says, "Because I'm scared that you will end up being hurt, and I don't want to set you up to be hurt. And people probably wouldn't hire you if you know the language." So that there was some sadness about that. So I know Bungi, I know a little bit about the language, because he was trying to protect us. But going to all of those different places, and as we got older, my sister Ogichudal Kwe we traveled all over North America. Wherever there were ceremonies, we would just go with our kids, eh? We never had very much money, but we managed to make it from A to B, and we always managed to make it home. And my dad would always say, if you're meant to be there, Creator will find a way to help you to get there. And for whatever reasons, we had enough money to get there and get back, to feed our kids. People took care of us. And that's when I started learning that our people really truly cared about one another and showed that kindness and that love. And they fed us, they housed us, they were just really nice to us. You almost think that we all knew each other, and that we truly, that essence about being family. So I've been learning about that since that time. So since that point on, I've always been learning from our people. The old people are my professors. The old people are my teachers, whether they're Haudenosaunee or Anishinaabe. But those ones that know how to teach with kindness and love and caring are the ones that I go to. And I think that's important when we teach, no matter where we are, is to teach with that kindness and integrity and with that light and that love.